Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and on this week's episode, I'm joined by Aidan Maguire, Drystock Grassland Farmer of the Year, to get an update on the grassland management on his farm over the coming weeks and his plan for silage 2022. Aidan, you're very welcome. Congratulations on winning the Grass10 Drystock Grassland Farmer of the Year last week. You've had a keen focus on grass for many years. Can you talk through the route you took to winning the award?
I started in 2019. I joined the Grass10 group that was put together by John Douglas through my Teagasc advisor, Donald McCabe, at the time. Donald thought it would be a good step for me to take. So I also joined up with the Green Acres programme at the same time. And both groups were very much about grass production and management of stock. So I started measuring the grass then on a weekly basis for the first few times. I suppose I got it wrong as many times as I got it right. But, as I built up a few grass wedges from measuring, I started to see, I suppose, the most suitable grass for my cattle to move into. And sometimes it meant skipping ahead, some of the better paddocks that were already gone past maybe 1,600 kgs. And by looking at the wedge, I could see that I needed to skip them to get the 1,400 kg level that I wanted my cattle to be grazing. So that's, like through studying the wedge, I suppose, and measuring the grass on a regular basis. That's how I found out. That's how I got the most benefit out of pasture base and through measuring grass, So that worked well, and every time I measured, I got better. I got more accurate, I think, at it, and I made more use of the information. I suppose then it also gave me the option to take out bales as soon as I seen a surplus, which meant I maintained the quality of the swart and that. So
the fact you were measuring grass, you had a good paddock system in place. What layout of paddocks had you on the farm, or what benefit have you seen them to helping with your grazing management?
Yeah, well, originally, now I suppose for the last 20 years, I had large paddocks is what I had. I always admired my neighbours, my dairy farmer neighbour setup, and I created large paddocks myself. But I wasn't making the best use of them, so I really didn't understand how to make the best use of them. So with Green Acres, when I joined the Green Acres program, we divided up the big paddocks into smaller, more manageable areas. And by doing that, it was like I got more land. I could see what could be potential silage 10 or 15 paddocks away from the grazing cattle. And I could also see where I might be a chance to cut back on fertilizer when the grass was growing at its best. The extra paddocks were a gift, really. And, I always knew I had options ahead of me to make the best use of grass and to help increase the cattle performance. I've put in a new central roadway this year, and it's a pleasure to move cattle to any paddock along it by myself. There's, it's getting to the right grass cover easily is fantastic. I have increased the size of some of my paddocks, which is probably going against the grain in a sense, but it just makes them easier to divide up equally. There are new ones are 1 hectare size paddocks with a central water trough, 190 gallon water trough. And from there, I can divide the paddock into 4 quarters. So each 1 hectare paddock has 3 gaps onto the central track, to help with poorer grazing conditions at the start, at the end of the year. It just makes the grazing of the cattle extremely flexible.
And how long are the stock spending in the paddocks now?
The cattle are spending approximately 2 days in each paddock, depending on the cover of grass and how well they're cleaning it out.
Aidan, from a labour point of view, how is the paddocks impacted on management on the farm?
The paddocks make it very, very easy to move cattle around. And, and when it comes to taking out grass for silage or that, it's the paddocks give you a great flexibility, is what I'd say.
And from a soil fertility point of view, what is the fertility status now on the farm, and how have you got it to this point?
Well, it's as good as I could ever hope it to be at the moment. It was one area I thought I could really influence, on the farm. So I was say about maybe 6 years ago, taking soil samples. I started by spreading lime 2 ton an acre 6 years ago, and then another 2 ton an acre 2 years ago, and soil sampled again this year, which showed, pH to be at 6.4 to 6.9 on all the paddocks, which I'm delighted with. And I also used the same sample results to target the P and K through the use of slurry on the farm. It worked really well. And the whole farm now is an index 3 and 4 for both P and K.
That's great because it reflects the stocking rate that you're now carrying on the farm.
Yes, it does. And like with the high stocking rate, I have plenty of slurry, and to target that slurry effectively is saving me a small fortune in fertilizer.
Particularly this year with the high costs, or what is your plan for fertilizer this year on the farm?
Well, through the help of John Douglas and David Argue, both Teagasc people who have helped me immensely over the last couple of years, we decided that I had used up to 56 units of nitrogen up until April. That'd be my normal way of doing it. And this year we aim to cut back to 45 units by the 1st of April. Now, as it turned out, with the lack of growth and the inclement weather, I didn't actually get all the fertilizer out. So, but the plan is to reduce it. Normally, I'd go with maybe 23 units of protected urea after each grazing. And this year now, what I hope to do is go about 17 units after each grazing.
It'll reduce it on your annual ton basis that way then.
The amount of fertilizer I use will be reduced, yeah.
And what is your plan for silage for this year?
At the moment, I have a red clover crop. I'm putting in I have 5 acres of red clover, which is set up to be a silage sward 3 to 4 times a year. And I'm putting in another 5 acres of red clover. It went that well last year. I'm delighted with it. And I have 15 acres already closed up of just ordinary paddocks that are already, they've got 3,000 gallons of slurry each and 90 units of protected urea.
And how is the management of the red clover silage different?
It needs to establish it. You need to let the light down to the base. So once we got it planted or sown and grown, we grazed it at a cover of 800 kgs the first time. Then we fertilized it with slurry, and I did put some nitrogen on it because the clover was there, but just not probably capable of doing all the work itself. So we got an excellent first cut off it then in June. And I just went with pure slurry for the second cut. So, and then we grazed it. Instead of cutting it a third time, we grazed it because conditions had started to deteriorate and I didn't want to damage the plants. So it worked well. There's a lovely cover of clover coming back in it for this year's crop at the moment. So looking forward to that again.
And when do you intend to cut that?
I'd be cutting it, I'd say, around the 15th of May. I'd say maybe if the way it's grown, there's a cover of over 2,000 on it at the moment. So we might go in a little bit earlier. Depends on best advice. I'll have a word with Teagasc and see how we take it from there. Might go a week earlier if it's heavy enough.
And how many crops will you hope to take from it this year?
I'd be hoping for definitely 3 cuts and possibly 4 if we can manage it. It is down to grass growth, and if it's more suitable to graze the last one, I will graze the last one because I don't want making wet soft silage.
How have you found feeding that over the winter last year for your first year?
I found that the cattle absolutely loved it, in the sense that it looked like that they ate less of it, but they were far more content on it. And it wasn't as high in DMD as I would have liked, but seemingly 71 was good for it. And the cattle were really content on it. And the yearlings did very well. Coming out of the shed, they had achieved 0.7 of a kg over the winter. So that was just along with 1 kg of meal. So I was delighted with that.
That's a great saving, Aidan, considering the price of meal next winter.
Yes, that's why I am going with another 5 acres this year. That'll probably be all my farm can manage to be 10 acres of red clover. But because it's taken out of the grazing block, it will impact on maybe the number of cattle I carry, but it will also reduce my meal bills for the winter, which has gone to a stage which is very important now.
Finally, Aidan, obviously you've been measuring grass for a number of years. For farmers interested in starting to measure grass this year, what advice would you have for them?
Well, I personally think it was the single one. I'd nearly say the single biggest improvement I made to my farm was to actually measure the grass. To me, it feels like, I'm actually counting me money. And, when the grass is growing well, my business is growing well. What you have, what you can do with it. I used to think the center of my farm business was the farmyard, but from managing and measuring the grass, I now know that the driving force behind it is really and truly the fields of grass. So everything you feed in the yard is costing you extra money. The cattle feeding themselves in the fields are making it for you.
That's great, Aidan. Thanks a million. Congratulations again. We look forward to an open day being held on the farm later in the year.
No problem at all. Thanks very much, Catherine.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Aidan for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.